After 9 hours stranded in a snowstorm, I called my mom for help. "Can you pick up the kids?" She sighed. "I'm at the groomer with your sister's dog. Call an Uber." You know that feeling? When your phone buzzes, and you instantly brace yourself, because you just know it's bad news, and it's coming for you. That's what happened 3 years ago, when a text flashed across my screen: "Your dad had a heart attack." My mother, no question about my kids, just a crisis served ice cold. It was a stark reminder of why I'd chosen to remove them from my life insurance, my house, and my phone. And if you're wondering how a son could respond to that with anything less than panic, let me tell you my story. My name's Stephen Caldwell, I'm 38, and I'm a police officer. But to understand my family, you need to go back to the beginning. We grew up in a modest house outside Denver. From the street, everything looked normal: fresh mulch in spring, a plastic pumpkin in fall, Christmas lights that blinked like we were trying hard to be festive. Inside, though, we had roles. My dad, Mark, worked long hours doing facilities maintenance for the school district. He was the kind of guy who fixed things quietly and didn't complain until it was too late. My mom, Denise, ran the house like a manager who never clocked out, except her management style was, whoever makes the most noise gets the most resources. And then there was my sister, Belle. Belle was the sun, and the rest of us were just expected to orbit her. I don't say that because I'm jealous of some childhood attention. I say it because that dynamic didn't stop when we got older. It only got more expensive. One of my earliest memories is a Christmas morning. I opened a box to find socks and a used paperback book. "Looks like something you'd like," Mom said. "Belle?" Belle opened an electric guitar. Not a little beginner one, a real one, amp and all. Dad's eyes flicked to me for half a second, the way you glance at a dog you feel bad for, then he cleared his throat and said, "Pretty cool, huh?" My mom chimed in, "She has talent, Stephen. She needs encouragement." I was 9. I remember holding those socks and thinking, so, I'm not talented. I'm just present. Another time, in middle school, I made the honor roll. I brought the paper home like it mattered. Mom was on the phone, telling a friend about Belle possibly auditioning for a dance team. I stood there, holding that paper until my hand got sweaty. She covered the phone. "That's nice, honey. Put it on the fridge." She never did. A week later, Belle got cut from the dance team and cried like the world had ended. Mom took her to the mall and bought her a brand new outfit to cheer her up. I got the silent message: my success was expected and boring, Belle's disappointment was an emergency. The third scene I keep coming back to: I was 16, Dad's truck broke down. He needed someone's car to get to work at 5 a.m. Mom looked at me. "Stephen, you can ride the bus to school. Why can't Belle ride the bus?" I asked. Mom stared at me like I'd said something obscene. "Belle has rehearsal. Don't start." That was the first time I felt it in my bones. Fairness wasn't part of our family values. Peace was the kind of peace you buy by letting one person win. There was only one adult in my life who called it what it was: my grandpa Frank. My dad's dad. An old-school Denver guy with a quiet voice and hands that always smelled like motor oil and coffee. He'd pick me up sometimes, and we'd go sit at a diner off Colfax. He'd listen in a way that made me feel like my words weren't a burden. One day, after Mom had chewed me out for making things harder, because I'd asked why Belle got a new phone and I didn't, Grandpa Frank said, "Your mama loves you, kid. But she's got a blind spot the size of the Rockies. Don't let that blind spot become your whole sky." I didn't fully understand it then. I just knew it felt like someone was finally turning the lights on. I became a cop partly because I needed structure, and partly because I wanted to be the kind of man who could stand between chaos and the people I loved. I joined the Denver Police Department after a couple years of community college and working security. The work changed me. It made me calm in emergencies and impatient with nonsense. It made me see patterns. It made me understand that if you keep letting someone cross the same line, they don't stop crossing it. They build a house on the other side and call it theirs. I married my wife, Lauren, when I was 29. She's steady. She asks direct questions. She is not impressed by guilt trips. Those are all qualities my family found cold the second they realized she didn't automatically submit to my mom's version of reality. We have 2 kids now, Mason, 9, and Chloe, 7. They're in that stage where their backpacks look too big for their bodies, and they tell you everything they're thinking without realizing it can break your heart. When they were babies, my mom loved being grandma in public. She'd post pictures. She'd tell her friends how exhausting it was to help us so much. But the help was mostly symbolic, like showing up with a casserole and then leaving before dishes needed to be done. Belle, meanwhile, stayed Belle. She bounced through jobs. She dated men who didn't support her dreams. She moved back in with my parents twice. She cried about how no one shows up for her, while my mom built her entire life around showing up for Belle. And I became the dependable one. It started small, like it always does. Dad called me once. "Your mom's stressing about the phone bill. Can you just add us to your plan? It'll save money." I did it. It was about $180 a month at first. I told myself it was temporary. Then there was a small loan for Belle's car repair, $600. Then another $900 because the shop found more issues. Then it was Mom asking if I could cover their insurance deductible when Dad needed dental work, $1,200. Then it was, "Stephen, your sister is behind on rent. Just this once, $1,500. Every time it came wrapped in the same paper, family helps family. Don't be like that. You know how hard things are." Hard things were always happening to them. Somehow, hard things never happened to me in their minds. I was a utility, a resource, a sturdy shelf they could set problems on. Lauren started noticing before I did. One night, after I transferred $800 to cover Belle's past due electric bill, Lauren sat at our kitchen table and said, "Are we funding her life?" I said, "It's not like that." She didn't raise her voice. She just looked at me. "Then what is it like?" I didn't have a clean answer. I had a messy one: guilt, habit, hope. That little boy part of me still trying to earn equal treatment by being useful. The worst part is, I wasn't just sending money. I had also tried to be responsible in the way cops do, thinking about what happens if something happens. When we bought our house in Denver, I didn't add my mom to the deed or anything that dramatic. But I did make choices that, looking back, were me trying to prove I trusted them. I put my parents as contingent beneficiaries on a life insurance policy through my job. If Lauren and the kids were gone, it would go to them. That felt normal at the time. I also gave my mom access in little ways. She had a spare key in case of emergencies. She was listed on an old-school pickup contact form when Mason was in kindergarten because she lived closer to the school than we did at the time. I even let her talk me into putting her name as an authorized user on one of my credit cards for emergencies, which I later learned meant for Belle's emergencies. Every time I pushed back, my mom acted like I was personally attacking her character. One afternoon, I told her I couldn't loan Belle money again because we needed to replace our furnace before winter. Mom's voice went sharp. "So, your sister just freezes?" I said, "Or she budgets." She laughed like that was adorable. "Stephen, you're so rigid. Not everyone is built like you." That line, "not everyone is built like you," became her excuse for everything. It meant Belle shouldn't be expected to plan, save, or take responsibility because she was sensitive and creative. Meanwhile, my ability to be responsible became a reason I deserved less care. Then came the snowstorm. If you live in Colorado, you know how fast the weather can turn. One minute it's dry pavement and blue sky, and the next it's a white wall, and every car is suddenly an abandoned idea. That day, I had been in the mountains for a required training session. Not glamorous, just a long day of classroom stuff and scenarios. The kind of thing that makes your brain feel like it's been wrung out. On the way back toward Denver, the snow started, heavier than forecast. At first, it was fine. Then, it got worse. Then, it got stupid. Traffic slowed. Brake lights became a red ribbon into the distance. The wind pushed snow sideways like it had a personal grudge against everyone on the road. I was still a good hour plus from home when my dashboard showed the temperature dropping and the roads turning shiny. My hands were tight on the wheel, and I could feel that creeping fear you get when you realize you might not be in control anymore. Then it happened. A semi up ahead jackknifed. Cars stopped. More cars stopped behind them. I rolled forward about 6 feet and then stopped. And then we didn't move again. At first, people stayed calm. Engines idled. Hazard lights blinked. Someone got out and waved their arms like they could direct weather. An hour passed, then 2. The snow kept coming. The sky went gray and heavy. My phone signal got spotty. I called Lauren and told her I was stuck, but I'd get home. Her voice was tight. "Stephen, Mason's school closes in an hour. Chloe's, too. If you're not?" "I know," I said, staring at the line of cars. "I know." We started calling around. Lauren had a work obligation she couldn't walk out of. It was one of those situations where leaving would risk her job, and we needed her job. We tried friends. One was out of town. One couldn't get to the school because her own street hadn't been plowed. Another said she'd try but sounded panicked. So, I called my mom. It felt logical. She lived within 20 minutes of the school on a normal day. This was exactly the kind of emergency family always talks about, right? She answered on the third ring, and I didn't even do the small talk. "Mom, I'm stuck on I-70. It's bad. I need you to pick up Mason and Chloe from school." There was a pause. Not the kind where she's thinking. The kind where she's annoyed you interrupted. She sighed. Steven. Mom. This is not optional. I'm not moving. I'm literally stranded. Another sigh, louder. I'm at the groomer with Belle's dog. I blinked. What? Belle had to work, and she asked me to help. I'm waiting for Luna to finish. Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady the way I do when I'm trying not to explode. My kids will be sitting at school, waiting for someone. This is a snowstorm. She made a little noise, a click of the tongue. Call an Uber. I stared at my windshield, where snow was building at the edges like a slow barricade. Are you kidding me? Steven, don't talk to me like that. Her tone snapped into full authority mode. Belle needs me right now. I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger, exactly. Something colder. Something like clarity. My kids need you, I said. Your grandkids. She sighed again, like I was forcing her to carry a heavy bag. Call an Uber. I can't do everything. And then she said the part that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. Besides, it's just school pickup. You're making it dramatic. I hung up before I said something that would have turned into a screaming match in front of strangers on the highway. I opened the Uber app with numb fingers. Surge pricing was insane. The schools were across town. The storm was swallowing the city. Drivers were scarce. The cheapest option was $340. I stared at that number and felt my stomach drop. That was groceries. That was a utility payment. That was money that could have gone into our kids' savings. But I didn't have a choice. I hit confirm. 9 hours. That's how long I sat there, inching forward a few feet every so often, watching people run their heaters until they got nervous about gas, watching someone hand out granola bars, watching a man in a Subaru get out and start pushing other cars like he was trying to be a hero in a movie. At some point, the state troopers started moving people off the highway in small waves. I'm a cop, but I wasn't working that incident. I was just another guy in a line, cold and stuck and powerless. Lauren texted me when she got home. Uber got them. They're safe. Mason was crying. Chloe fell asleep on the way. I sat there in my truck, and I didn't cry, but I felt the place inside me where hope had been living for my mom finally go quiet. When I got home, it was late. The kids were already in pajamas. Lauren looked exhausted and furious in that quiet way she gets when she's holding herself together. Mason ran up and hugged me so tight my ribs hurt. Dad, I thought you weren't coming. I held him and said, I'm here. I'm here. Chloe mumbled, snow was loud, and then she leaned on me like I was the wall holding her up. After the kids were asleep, Lauren and I sat at the table. The house was finally quiet except for the heater clicking on and off. Lauren slid her phone across the table. On the screen was my mom's Facebook post from earlier that day. A picture of Belle's dog, freshly groomed with a little bow on her head. Caption, Snow Day errands with my girl Luna. Anything for my baby. I didn't even know what to say. Lauren said, Steven, this is who she is. I nodded slowly. Then I stood up, walked to our office, and opened my laptop. I didn't do it in a rage. I did it like I was writing a report. That night, I took them off my life insurance, my house, and my phone. I logged into my benefits portal and changed the beneficiaries, so it was Lauren and the kids. And if something happened to all of them, it went into a trust controlled by Lauren's brother, who's a CPA and not emotionally manipulable. I went to the phone carrier website and removed my parents and Belle from my plan. I paid off their devices so there was no excuse. Then I ended their lines with a scheduled cutoff date. I changed the locks the next morning and told Lauren's dad, who's handy, to come install a deadbolt I'd been putting off. I also went through every place my mom's name had been attached to anything, just in case. School pickup contacts, emergency contacts, doctor forms, everything. When I finished, I sat back in my chair and felt like I could finally breathe. The backlash hit fast. Mom called, furious, when her phone stopped working. What did you do? I said, I removed you from my plan. Her voice rose. How could you do that to us? I said, you told me to call an Uber in a blizzard for your grandkids. She went quiet for half a second, then said, don't start with that. That was one day, I repeated, and it showed me everything. Belle sent me a long text about how I was punishing Mom and acting like a cop, even at home, and thinking you're better than everyone. Dad didn't text at all. Dad's style was silence, which is just another form of choosing the loudest person. Grandpa Frank called me, though. He said, you okay? I told him what happened. The Uber, the dog groomer, the post. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, that's a hard lesson, kid. I said, I feel like I'm betraying them. You're not betraying them, he said. You're refusing to bankroll disrespect. Then he added, now do it right. Paperwork, boundaries, no arguing. Grandpa Frank helped me the way he always did, calmly, practically. He came over with a folder like he'd been waiting for this moment. He'd kept copies of family documents over the years because he didn't trust my mom's chaos. We sat at my kitchen table and went through everything like it was evidence. We printed out bank statements showing transfers. We pulled old text messages where Mom promised just this once and then asked again 2 weeks later. We made a spreadsheet of the money I'd sent. $600 here, $900 there, $1,500, $1,200 for a $100 vet emergency that turned out to be Belle wanting a new crate. It wasn't about shaming anyone. It was about me not gaslighting myself anymore. A month later, there was a family event that forced everything into the open, my dad's small retirement dinner at a restaurant in Lakewood. Mom insisted we all come. She framed it like a fresh start. Lauren didn't want to go. I didn't want to go, but Grandpa Frank said, sometimes you show up once to make it clear you're not the villain in their story. So, we went. The restaurant had that dim lighting that makes everyone's face look softer than it should. Mom wore a nice blouse and acted like we were one big happy family for the hostess. Belle arrived late, dramatic, talking about how hard her week had been. She hugged Mom like they were reunited after a war. When we sat down, Mom did that thing she always does where she narrates reality. She raised her glass and said, I just want to say how proud I am of this family. Mark worked so hard. Belle is doing her best. And Stephen, well, Stephen is Stephen. Everyone laughed politely like that was a joke. I felt Lauren's hand on my knee under the table. Not squeezing, just there. Steady. Mom turned to the table and said loudly, and I just want to say it's been difficult lately because some people have been making choices that hurt the family. Her eyes landed on me. Belle sighed dramatically and said, we don't even have phones right now because someone decided to go on a power trip. I looked at my dad. He stared at his plate. Mom said, Stephen thinks because he has a badge, he gets to punish people. He cut us off over one misunderstanding. Something about hearing it framed that way in public, like I was unstable, made my stomach settle into that cold calm again. Before the clash, I'll say this to you watching, if you've ever been in that moment where your family is telling a version of the story that makes you sound like a monster, you know how tempting it is to start yelling. I didn't yell. I put my fork down and said, it wasn't a misunderstanding. Mom's smile froze. Stephen, not tonight. Actually, I said, tonight is perfect, since you brought it up. Belle rolled her eyes. I turned slightly, so I wasn't just talking to Mom, but to the whole table, to reality. I was stranded on I-70 for 9 hours in a snowstorm, I said. I called Mom and asked her to pick up my kids from school. She told me she was watching Belle's dog get groomed and to call an Uber. Mom opened her mouth. I kept going. I called an Uber. It cost $340. My kids sat there scared because their dad couldn't get to them, and their grandma chose a dog appointment. Mom's face flushed. Stephen, you make it sounds how it was, I said. And that was the moment I realized I'm not your son when it matters. I'm your solution. Grandpa Frank, sitting beside me, cleared his throat. He didn't often speak up in front of everyone, but when he did, it landed. He said, Denise, you did choose the dog. I was on the phone with Stephen that day, too. Don't rewrite it. Mom looked at him like he'd betrayed her. Belle snapped, Grandpa, stay out of it. Grandpa Frank looked at her and said, no. Then he tapped the folder he'd brought, which he'd insisted we bring, just in case. He didn't pull it out like a weapon. He just opened it calmly and slid a page toward my dad. It was the spreadsheet, dates, amounts, notes. 87 separate transfers over a few years, totaling a number that made my stomach twist when I saw it in one place. Dad's eyes moved over it. His jaw tightened. Mom stared at it like it was an insult. What is this? This is what I've been doing, I said. Quietly, while being treated like an inconvenience. Belle scoffed. No one asked you to. Mom cut in fast. We are your parents and I was your son, I said, still calm. But when I asked for help one time with your grandkids, you sighed like I was bothering you. Dad finally spoke, and his voice was small. Denise, you should have gone. Mom whipped toward him. Mark, don't start. He flinched. And that flinch told me everything about their marriage dynamic, too. I looked at my dad and said, I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting my kids and my wife. That's my job. That's my responsibility. Mom's eyes went wet, but not in a soft way, in an angry way. So what? We're dead to you now. I said, you made yourselves unavailable when it mattered. I'm just making the paperwork match the reality. We left shortly after, not in a dramatic storm out. We paid our portion. We said, happy retirement, to Dad quietly. We walked out into the cold air like people leaving a courtroom. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. Angry calls, long texts, relatives I barely talked to suddenly messaging me about forgiveness. My mom's sister telling me, "Your mother is heartbroken." I didn't argue. That was the key. Every time someone tried to drag me into debate, I said the same thing: this isn't up for discussion. Please respect my decision. When Mom tried to guilt Lauren directly, Lauren said, "We're not discussing this," and blocked her. Belle posted vague things online about toxic people and blood isn't always family, which was funny coming from her. Dad called once, late at night, and his voice sounded tired. "Steven," he said, "your mom, she's upset." I said, "Dad, are you okay?" He paused. "I'm fine." That was dad language for, "I don't want to admit I'm not fine." I said, "You can talk to me, but I'm not funding Belle's life anymore, and Mom isn't entitled to my resources." He didn't argue. He didn't agree. He just said, "Okay," like he was putting a heavy box down, but still wanted credit for carrying it. Over the next 3 years, my life got quieter in the best way. We focused on our kids. I coached Mason's Little League. Lauren and I stopped having fights about money because there was no more mystery drain. I set up a proper emergency fund. I set up college accounts. I slept better. Grandpa Frank stayed close. He'd come over and drink coffee with me in the garage while I fixed small things around the house, and he'd say, "Peace feels weird when you're not used to it, huh?" And he was right. At first, peace felt like waiting for the next hit, like the calm before a storm. But eventually, peace started to feel normal. Then came the text. "Your dad had a heart attack." It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting at my desk at the precinct finishing a report when my phone buzzed. I saw my mom's name. And for a second, my body reacted like it always used to, that old automatic readiness to jump. Then I read the words and felt a different kind of heaviness because despite everything, he's still my dad. I stepped out into the hallway where it was quiet and called Lauren to tell her. She didn't tell me what to do. She just said, "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." I stared at my mom's message for a full minute, watching the typing bubble appear and disappear like she expected instant access. 3 years earlier, I'd been stranded and helpless, and Mom had sighed like my kids were an inconvenience. Now she had an emergency and wanted the reliable son back. I stared at her text, then typed, "I'm sorry to hear that. I hope he recovers. Send me the hospital and room number. I'll contact Dad directly when he's stable. I'm not available for anything else. For rides or errands, please ask Belle." I hit send. She shot back, "Wow, cold. After everything we've done for you." I didn't respond because that was the trap. Once I had the details, I called the hospital, asked about visitation, and eventually got Dad on the phone. His voice was weak. "Hey, kiddo." My throat tightened. "How are you feeling?" "Tired." When he said Mom told him I was still mad, I kept it simple. "I'm not doing that right now. I'm checking on you." I visited once, sat by his bed, and before I left, he whispered, "I should have gone to get your kids. I'm sorry." It didn't erase the past, but it was the first time he'd owned it. That night at home, Lauren asked if I regretted my boundaries. I thought about the $340 Uber and the dog groomer. "No," I said. "I regret how long I waited." It's a strange thing, choosing yourself and your kids over the people who raised you. It feels like betrayal, but sometimes, it's the only way to protect what matters most. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace in your family and protecting your own well-being or the well-being of your children? How did you navigate that impossible choice? Tell me in the comments below. I'd really love to hear your experiences.